This is section 8.5, Annuities, Methods of Saving and Investments, Part 2. Example 1, A, B, and C is on this first slide here. Part A says, suppose that between the ages of 25 and 35, you contribute $4,000 per year to a 401k, so remember that's a type of retirement plan, and your employer matches this contribution dollar for dollar on your behalf. The interest rate is 8.5% compounded annually. What is the value of the 401k at the end of 10 years? So to begin, let me go ahead and rewrite that overall total amount formula that we talked about in the previous video. Total value for an annuity, such as a retirement plan like this. So the full value, the full amount, we use capital A equals the principal, P is the deposit amount. Then we had bracket parenthesis 1 plus the interest rate R over the number of times compounded N, close the inner parentheses, raised to the N times T for time and years, power, minus 1, close the bracket, all over, parentheses, another R over N. So in this particular example, let's just think about what we're going to plug into that right side of the formula. So the deposit amount, P, well, that's the total deposit, the total amount of money that's regularly going into the account. So yes, we are contributing $4,000 each year into that account, but our employer matches this contribution dollar for dollar on your behalf. So, in other words, if we're putting forth $4,000, our employer is also putting forth another $4,000. So, my deposit amount is not just $4,000, it's the $4,000 we're contributing to our retirement plan, plus the $4,000 our employer is contributing to our retirement plan. So, of course, when you add those together, $8,000 is what we're going to plug into P. R, the interest rate, well, it says 8.5%. We've got to convert it to a pure decimal. That's moving the decimal point 2 hops to the left. So 1, 2, and that becomes 0.085. that we're going to plug into R in a second here. So 0.085 for the interest rate. Now, what are we going to plug into all the N's in the formula? Well, N is the number of times that the interest is compounded, meaning recalculated. And if it's compounded annually, that's once a year. So all the N's will equal 1. And finally, the time T in years. Well, let's think this out. So if we start contributing at age 25 and we stop at age 35, 35 minus the 25 means that we're contributing for 10 years. So T equals 10. See what I mean by you really have to read these questions carefully, because if you're in too much of a hurry, it's very easy to make a little mistake and then your entire answer is wrong. Okay, so let's go ahead and plug in. I'll do it in blue. So the whole amount equals, we said the principal P, the deposit amount is $8,000, bracket parenthesis 1 plus, we said R was 0.085 over N was 1 for compounded annually, raised to the N times T power, so that's 1 for N, times the time was 10 years, we said, minus the 1 from the formula, bring it down, all over, parentheses R again was 0.085 over N again is still 1. And they will tell you how on the homework and on the test they want you to round it. Let's just go with the nearest dollar, since in my example I've typed up here I didn't specify. So we'll round it to the nearest dollar on the calculator. And I'm just going to erase just a little bit just to give us a little bit more space. It makes it a little bit easier to read too. Oh, but real quick, before I forget, before I type this whole thing into the calculator, we should always take care of the exponent first. So in the exponent spot, I have 1 times the 10, right here, 1 times the 10, which is obviously 10 again. So 10 is my exponent. Typing this into the calculator, we had 8,000. We used the normal parenthesis buttons for brackets. So then we had 2 left parentheses sitting side by side, because bracket followed by parenthesis. 1 plus 0.085, which was divided by 1, which really is just 0.085 again. Close the parentheses. We're going to raise it up to the 10th power was our exponent. Right arrow key to bring it down, minus 1. Close the parentheses again. Divided by, parentheses around the denominator, 0.085 divided by 1, close the parentheses, enter. If we're rounding to the nearest dollar, because of this 7 that's after the decimal point, it means we're going to round the 1 spot up. So the 0 is going to round up to a 1. So that's $118,681. I'm going to write that down. So approximately $118,681 is my answer to part A. Now part B, so this is all example 1 still, says after 10 years of working for this firm, you move on to a new job. However, you keep your accumulated retirement funds in the 401k. How much money will you have in the plan when you reach age 65? So, this is a great real-life example, and it shows you that it does pay off in the long run to just keep the money in that account. So even though you've changed jobs, you probably have a totally different retirement plan that you're depositing into with the new job, the money, thanks to good old interest, is going to still keep accumulating in that original 401k. Couple different formulas you can use. So when it says how much money will you have, I'm not going to use the same exact formula as I used in part A. Why not? Because I'm not making deposits into that account anymore. So the formula from part A had a P, which represented deposit amount. Since I'm not making any more deposits into that account, that money, in other words, is just going to sit there and accumulate interest. The formula we should use instead, we talked about a few videos ago, and this is the future value formula. Or you could calculate the interest and add it to the amount. That's another way of doing it, but future value will get you there a little bit quicker. We first talked about the future value formula in the section 8.3 simple interest video, and that formula went like this. The overall amount in your account, A, equals the principal, the original amount, P, times 1 plus the rate, R, raised to the T for time and years power. So, using that formula, the overall amount in that account, well, P represents the original amount that you left behind when you were done making deposits into the account. So that was our answer from part A. That was the $118,681 amount. That's how much was in the account after 10 years. So that's the amount of money that's just going to sit in that account. We're not going to withdraw from it. We're not going to add anything to it. But it is going to sit in the account and accumulate a lot of interest. So parentheses 1 plus, the interest rate is still the same, 8.5%, which converted to a pure decimal was 0.085, because we moved the decimal 2 hops to the left to go from a percent backwards to just a decimal. So 0.085. Raise it to T, the time in years. Well, you left the other job at age 35, and that's when you stopped making deposits into that account as well. And you're going to retire, it says in part B, at age 65. So from 35 to 65, we'll just simply subtract. 65 minus 35 means 30 years. 30 years. So 30 is our exponent. That's how long that money is just going to sit in the account for, from age 35 to 65, so 30 years. So then just type it into your calculator just like that. And as you do it, just make sure when you round to the nearest dollar, you should be getting a really big number. You should be getting that there is $1,371,745. Wow. Now that interest rate was really high is what helped out as well, but also it does pay off to let money sit in an account, to not withdraw it and let it accumulate interest. It helps with any kind of a savings example in real life, a savings scenario. So now part C says, what is the difference between the amount of money you will have accumulated in the 401k at age 65 and the amount you contributed to the plan? All right, so the first mention is the money you will have accumulated in the 401k at age 65. Well, that was your answer from part B, so bring it down. That ginormous $1,371,745 amount. It asks for the difference, so we're going to subtract. And it says, and the amount you contributed to the plan. Well, let's think it out logically. If we go back to part A, we contributed $4,000, so 4,000 times, we did that once a year, so times 1 technically, times, and we did it for 10 years, from age 25 to 35. So I have $1,371,745 minus, I'm going to multiply before I subtract. So 4,000 times 1 times 10 is going to, of course, give me 40,000. And now we just subtract. You can do it either in your head or on the calculator. But you should be getting, for the final answer to part C, $1,331,745. Wow. So in other words, that gigantic number over $1 million, the vast majority of the money in your account is thanks to interest. So the point that they're trying to make is interest is a good thing for us when it's a savings situation, a savings, investment, annuity situation. Not so good a thing for us when it relates to our debt, like our credit cards, our car payment, our student loans, our mortgage for our house payment, that sort of a thing. But it's a good thing because we didn't deposit a cent of this. That was just the interest that accrued from letting the money sit in that account with that really, really nice interest rate. The last part of this section is going to deal with being able to read and interpret a stock table. And there might be some vocab about stocks versus bonds as well in the homework and even on the test. So investors purchase stock, which is really shares of ownership in a company. And the shares indicate the percent of ownership. Any investor who owns some percentage of the company is called a shareholder. Buying or selling stock is referred to as trading it, of course. Stocks are traded on a stock exchange or a stock market. The price of stock is determined by the law of supply and demand. So stock prices indicate the performance of the companies they present, as well as the state of the national and global economies. People who buy stock become part owners in a company. However, people who buy bonds are lending money to the company from which they buy them. So generally speaking, investing in bonds is less risky than investing in stocks. However, the amount of money you can potentially earn is lower. So they would say the return is lower with bonds as opposed to stocks generally. A mutual fund is a group of stocks and or bonds that's managed by a professional investor. When you purchase shares in this, you give your money to the fund manager. So that's just a bunch of vocab that I've rattled off that you might be encountering in the homework, just as a heads up. Looking at example 2, it says use the stock table for Coca-Cola to answer the following questions. So as we're looking through here, we have the cost, the 52-week high, the 52-week low. So that's the highest price the stock went for the last 52 weeks, and the lowest price that the stock went for in the last 52 weeks. The name of the stock is next, the symbol of the stock after that. If you own stock, the dividend, D-I-V-I-D-E-N-D, the amount of money you get per share, in other words, is next. So in other words, 72 cents per share that you owned. The percent yield is next. The price to earnings ratio, abbreviated PE, is next. We're going to be discussing more about what these mean. This is actually a really long question. It goes through something like part H, I believe. The volume in the sales volume in hundreds is next. So in other words, the number of shares traded yesterday in hundreds. That's what that volume 100s column means. The highest price the stock went for yesterday is the high. The lowest price the stock went for yesterday is the low. The price at the time the market closed yesterday is the close column. And net change summarizes the difference in price from when the stock market closed 2 days ago compared to when it closed yesterday. So in other words, if you see a plus symbol here, that means that the price of the stock in that 24-hour period went up. So here it went up 3 cents because it says plus 0.03. If it were a negative symbol, that means that it went down from 2 days ago to yesterday, in between the market closes during that 24-hour period. If you saw just ... no numbers, that means that there was no difference whatsoever in the price between that 24-hour period. So I know that's a lot of information. Let's go ahead and try this question out. It says in part A, what were the high and low prices for the past 52 weeks? Obviously, that's the first two columns. So the highest price, high in past 52 weeks. Well, right over here, $63.38. And the low over the last 52 weeks is right after that. I'll just write low equals $42.37. And you would just type these answers right in. They'll tell you how to format it in the homework, but I don't think you need a dollar symbol. You will need the decimal point, of course. B, if you owned 3,000 shares of Coca-Cola stock last year, what dividend did you receive? So how much money would you receive? Clearly, the word dividend, we're going to look at the div column. So we got 3,000 shares is how many we owned, times the amount of money we got per share, look under the dividend column, was 0.72, in other words, 72 cents. So you're just going to simply multiply the number of shares you owned times the dividend amount per share. So 3,000 times 0.72, and you should be getting $2,160 as the final answer to part B. I'll go ahead and circle the answers to A as well. Part C, what is the annual return for dividends alone? How does this compare to a bank account offering a 3.5% interest rate? Whenever it asks for annual return, that's when you're going to look at the percent yield column, the YLD. That's a percent formatted number, one of the few columns that's not a money formatted number. So when I look that up, it says 1.5. In other words, the amount of money, the return you got back by owning stock, this stock last year was 1.5%. So annual return equals 1.5% when you look at the yield percent column. Now, sentence 2, how does this compare to a bank account offering a 3.5% interest rate? Well, just simply compare the numbers. Clearly 3.5% is larger than 1.5%, so you would have gotten more money had you chosen to invest in the bank account rather than in the stock, this particular stock anyway. So I'm just going to write, it's a smaller, because it says how does this compare? So it's a smaller percent. This is a smaller percent return than the bank account. Final answer. We are still on the same question. I reinserted the same exact picture of the Coca-Cola stock on the top of your screen. So now we're on part D, which says how many shares of Coca-Cola were traded yesterday. So we are going to look up, whenever it says how many shares, this is the volume in 100s column, which is right here. So scoop up that number, which right now is 72032. To save some space, they do abbreviate it. Look at the title, volume in 100s. So whatever that number is, times it by 100 every time to see the value that it actually represents. So when I multiply by 100, I'm going to simply insert 2 zeros at the end of this number. So 72032 with 2 zeros at the end, which I'm seeing is really representing 7,203,200 shares were traded yesterday. Final answer to D. E says what were the high and low prices for Coca-Cola shares yesterday? So not over the last 52 weeks like part A of this question said, yesterday. So that is when we're going to look at just simply the high and low columns. When I look at the high price column to begin, it says $49.94. In other words, that was the highest price that one share of this stock went for yesterday in the stock market. And the lowest price right beside it, $48.33. So the lowest price this particular stock, one share of it went for yesterday. Okay. So there, both of those answers would complete part E. Part F says, what was the price at which Coca-Cola shares last traded when the stock market closed yesterday? So I've circled the word closed, so clearly we're going to look up the close column. That's near the end, second from the end. So in other words, when the stock market closed yesterday, the price was $49.50 for one share of this stock. So $49.50. Final answer to part F. Same question. I know it's a long one. Just 2 parts to go though. So I've reinserted yet again the same exact picture of the Coca-Cola stock table on the top of your screen. Part G says, what does the value in the net change column mean? So as I look it up, plus symbol means that the price increased, whereas a minus symbol would mean that it decreased. In our case, it's a plus, it's a money amount, so 0.03 means it went up 3 cents. And the net change always compares the price from 2 days ago when the market closed to yesterday when the stock market closed. So the plus 0.03 means yesterday's market close, in other words, the price when the stock market closed, went up, since we had a plus symbol there, went up 3 cents, because it was 0.03. From 2 days ago when the stock market closed. From 2 days ago. I'll just write market close. So plus 0.03 means yesterday's market close went up 3 cents from 2 days ago market close. So it's measuring the change in price over a 24-hour period from 2 days ago market close to yesterday's stock market close. And finally, H, compute Coca-Cola's annual earnings per share using the following formula. So annual earnings per share, you're going to look up yesterday's closing price per share, which is under the close column, and you're going to divide it by the PE ratio, which is under the PE column. So really you're taking the close column number and you're dividing by the PE number. So here we go, the close number in the numerator. Let's erase some of this old circling stuff so we can see it a little bit better. There we go. $49.50. So 49.50 divided by the PE ratio number. So now let's look up the PE column. It was 37. So 49.50 divided by 37. I'm going to go ahead and type that division question into my calculator. And when I do that, I'm going to round to the nearest cent, meaning 2 digits out. So I'll put approximately. I'm getting approximately $1.34 because the third digit is a 7, so I round the 3 up to a 4. So $1.34. So the annual earnings per share for Coca-Cola was $1.34. Again, that's annual earnings per share if you own their stock. The PE ratio, by the way, which was 37 in this question, tells us that yesterday's closing price per share of $49.50 is 37 times greater than the earnings per share of $1.34.